Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun DIY sailboat refit video here aboard good old Athena. In this video I'll continue to work on the head or bathroom here aboard Athena. I need to put in a mini bulkhead that's going to separate the shower from the head, and I also want to figure out the sink situation over here. I got back from spending 2 weeks in Los Angeles with Ava yesterday. As always, I am super jet lagged and missing Ava something fierce. This time around, I've only brought back a single boat goodie for Athena. We'll get back to that a little later in the video because today I am super pressed for time. The reason I'm pressed for time is because winter is coming. I can use West Systems 205 hardener, which is their fast hardener for the 105 resin, but even when I use the fast hardener, the epoxy will not cure below 5 degrees Celsius. I can heat the inside of the boat and continue working on stuff here inside of the boat, but I won't be able to heat the uninsulated hull. So that means once the temperature drops below 5 degrees Celsius, I can no longer tab plywood or foam to the hull. Hopefully I'll have another couple of weeks before it gets too cold to tab stuff to the hull, because the more I can get tab to the hull before it gets too cold, the more I can actually finish of the interior over the winter. I'm a little bit frustrated because the foam I've ordered to separate the shower from the head is stuck somewhere in Germany, and I'm having a very hard time sourcing the plywood I need to be able to rough out the nav station and the galley. But there is something I can go ahead and do today, and that is to get this piece of cabin sole tapped to the hull. As you can see right now, this plywood here is in no way attached to the hull. Of course, I need to do that, and I need to do that before I can put in the foam that's going to separate the shower from the head. It is a few days later. The tapping in here should now have cured fully, and there's more good news. My foam finally showed up, and I've also got a fresh supply of plywood. What's even better than that is that I've found a place only 40 minutes from here where I can buy plywood of really good quality for a reasonable price. I pay just over $100 per sheet for this stuff, and while that is a good chunk of change, it is really good quality plywood. And what I'm most excited about is the fact that I can get however much of this stuff I need just 40 minutes from here. That is so convenient rather than having to order it through the lumberyard and having to wait 2 weeks for it to show up. And yeah, I am super excited about this. I've put a pencil line down here on the cabin sole to help me line up the foam that's going to separate the shower from the head. In here it's going to be 66 centimeters. That is all the space I can allocate to the shower, so I'm hoping that's going to be okay. But let's go ahead and get started fitting the foam. Good morning, guys. It is a wet and rainy Saturday morning. Fortunately, it's nice and dry here inside of Athena. It's only been about 10 hours since I laid up the glass here, so the epoxy is not fully cured yet. But if we look at the surface, it is nice and flat. I mentioned that because if there had been some waviness to this surface where the foam is completely flat, that would have been a telltale sign of me using too much epoxy. But this looks absolutely perfect. There are no voids, no waviness, just perfect. Even though the epoxy is not fully cured yet, I think it's cured enough that I can go ahead and move this out of the way. Before leaving the boat tonight, I can go ahead and lay up glass on the back of this, and then tomorrow we can trim this and get it tabbed in place. Of course, I could go ahead and lay up glass on the back of the foam right now, but that would mean I would lose the rest of the day because I can't really move around here inside of the boat with the foam here in the middle. My plan for today is to get started on the nav station. To be more precise, I want to start building the seat here in the nav station. The reason I'm starting with the nav station is because the size of the nav station will determine how much space is left over for the galley. Before I tore out all of the interior, the galley started here and went all the way to the main bulkhead. After I'm done putting in the nav station, the galley is probably going to start from somewhere around here. But remember, we're going to have this big kitchen island doohickey out here in the middle, so we're actually gaining more counter space than we're giving up. I've removed all of the junk that was in the way, and now we can start figuring this out. I am going to have to trim this bulkhead a little bit, because when I put this up, I wasn't sure where I wanted to put the door. I've since then decided that I want the door here, so I'm going to have to remove about this much of the bulkhead. The door is going to be hinged over here, and it's also going to have a hinge in the middle, so it'll fold in half and sort of stow away over here. So I need room here for double the thickness of whatever I'm going to construct the door out of, which is most likely going to be 10mm foam with a few millimeters for fiberglass, so let's say 25mm, and then I need room for a door frame, so I will give myself 5 centimeters. All of the doors here aboard Athena are going to be 50 centimeters wide, so that puts the end of the door right around there. That means the seat is going to start roughly where this bucket is positioned. Of course, the seat is going to extend out towards the hull, so yeah, this feels perfectly fine to me. I'm going to make the seat the same height as the settee, which is just shy of 42 centimeters. And then in terms of the depth up here, I think we're going to go for 45 centimeters. In this scenario, I think it's easiest to start with the top first and then add the sides afterwards. Now, the astute might have noted that this top piece here is extending out a little bit too far. That's to make sure that I've got enough plywood that I can take the curvature of the hull into consideration. And if we look at the amount of plywood I need to remove, it should be fairly close to what I've got here. I've put a bunch of lines down here to help guide me. All I have to do now is just to measure the biggest gap I've got. And then it is just a matter of transferring the curvature onto the plywood. Yep, that is perfect. I've put some effort into bending or curving the plywood on the settee and also on the bulkhead between the head and the saloon. And I want to do the same here because for one, it'll look a lot better, and also it'll make getting in and out of here a little bit easier. But here it is very much going to be a compromise between aesthetics and the amount of room you've got available to sit on. So here I'm just going to do one 90-degree bend instead of two 45. I don't want a bunch of different radiuses here aboard the boat. That'll look very messy. So I want to find a radius that I can easily reproduce. And I think this big can of paint here is going to be my best bet. Here is the top, and I've also made a little support piece here that I can use just temporarily while curving the plywood down here in the bottom, so that I'm sure that the curvature is nice and uniform. I've lined this side up so that I can get it to match the curvature of the hull, but I think that's going to be easier to do if I just get rid of a little bit of this guy first. That improved my access a whole heck of a lot. Fingers crossed. Yep, that looks perfect. Here I can see the position of the first cut I'm going to make to be able to bend or curve this plywood. Through a highly scientific bit of trial and error, I've determined that a width between the cuts, the same size as 2 stir sticks, is just about perfect for this. That is all of the cuts done. Now it just remains to see if this will bend. Booyah to your mama. Turns out Captain Dum Dum here forgot to order stainless steel screws, so I am all out. That means I can't do the final assembly today, but I can still get the seat mounted in place. I'll just have to replace some screws next week. I've got all of my pieces ready, and I've put down a little bit of plastic both on the cabin sole and here on the corner of the top, just to make sure that I can take everything apart. It might not look like it, but once the thickened epoxy has cured, then this thing is gonna be rock solid. That is one pretty dang good looking seat, if I do say so myself. As you can see here, all of the little cuts are completely filled with thickened epoxy. I made this little test piece using the same principle of filling the cuts with thickened epoxy, and this thing is ridiculously strong. So yeah, I think that seat is gonna be perfectly fine. I am fast running out of time, so I'll lay up the glass off camera, but I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Bam! Bulkhead is done, but there is some bad news. I am completely out of epoxy, so I won't be able to mount the bulkhead today. Captain Dum Dum strikes again. The good news is that the bulkhead is completely done, so as soon as I get my hands on some more epoxy, it'll just be a matter of popping it in and tapping it to the hull. I'm not particularly fond of working with this foam because, for one, it's pretty expensive and it's also very time consuming, but I'm only going to use this stuff inside of the shower. And with the bulkhead here behind me done, there's only one more big piece left, and that is where the old door used to be. That piece of foam is gonna go somewhere right around here. This is pretty much spot on for the size of the door opening. The access to the shower is going to be here, and to prevent water from splashing out of the shower, there's going to be one of those folding doors I described yesterday in plexiglass or some kind of acrylic, and it's going to be opening in here. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I also wanted to figure out the sink or countertop situation over here, but I'm going to hold off on doing that until I've got the little mini bulkhead in place, because the amount of room that's left over for the head is, well, there's not a lot of room there, and I don't want to mess that up. I've checked the weather forecast, and next week there's only going to be 1 or 2 days where it's warm enough for me to tab stuff to the hull. So I want to have as much stuff ready as I can, like the mini bulkhead and the seat. I've got a bit of time left over today, so I might as well see if I can cut the plywood that's going to go on the forward side of the nav station. This is not exactly what I'm going for, but it should give you an idea. The foam here is too wide and is also protruding too far out into the cabin. The piece of plywood is too far forward, but still, this is roughly what the nav station is going to look like. The reason I put up all of this stuff here was just to give myself an idea of the dimensions of the nav station. There's going to be a computer monitor mounted here, and I don't want that to be too far away or too close, but it can certainly come a lot closer than this. Everything about a boat is a compromise. There is a very limited amount of space. Taking that into consideration, I think the forward end of the nav station is going to be where this green foam is located right now. I might as well take advantage of the fact that I've got this little bit of plywood still tabbed to the hull. The offset between this and the new piece of plywood is going to be 15 centimeters. As you can see, I got a reasonably good fit there, but now I need to trim this, and I've been staring at this for about an hour trying to figure it out. Now, this bit here is protruding out too far this way, and it's too short also. This up here is 130 centimeters above the cabin sole. That means I can mount a screen back here and have it be at a comfortable level. I think it's okay to extend this piece of plywood up to here. The nav station is going to become a little bit of a cave, but I think that's okay. The problem I'm having right now is figuring out the width of this piece of plywood, because the width of this is going to be determined by the width of the galley, and the width of the galley is going to be determined by something which we have not decided yet. It would be really cool to not have to carry propane here aboard Athena. I know a lot of other boats have started using, for instance, induction for cooking, but if we're going to go the induction route, we would also want some kind of a combination microwave convection oven, and Ava would like for all of that to be gimbaled. Of course, you can't buy something like that, which means I can't just grab the measurements. I'd have to build some kind of metal box to shove the oven in and put the cooktop on top of. And I have no idea of knowing how much swing that would need. So yeah, hence my little conundrum here. There's only one way for me to proceed, and that is to figure out the design of the metal box so that I can figure out how much it's going to swing. To figure out the design of the metal box, I first need to figure out what oven we want in there and what cooktop we want. So yeah, I am gonna spend the rest of today doing that. I hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena next weekend for hopefully a little bit better structured video. The first video after I come back from having seen Ava is always kind of a jumbled mess because of the jet lag. But yeah, as always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!